Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to the Whiskey Cove. And on today's episode, we asked the question, how much should you be paying for these Buffalo Trace bourbons? Let's find out. Run the video. Alright then folks, and thank you for joining us on another new episode of the Whiskey Cove, where we'll be asking how much for you folks at home should you be paying for these Buffalo Trace bourbons. So I haven't included any Weller bourbons on this list because I think it would just take too long, and some of the videos I've been doing lately have been pushing 20 minutes and they're over, so I want to kind of condense it a little bit more. If there's a need or if there's a want, I'll do a separate video of Wellers and maybe some of like the Buffalo Trace kosher wheats and then some of the benchmarks, and then we'll do that together. So if you want to see that, like the video and comment down below there as well. And if you're not a subscriber already, definitely a good time to be doing it because we are getting oh so close to that 5,000 subscriber mark, because all you folks at home have been fantastic and absolutely showing out. So what happens when we get to 5,000 subscribers? So you have the opportunity at home to win one of 6 free bottles. You need to do 2 things. You need to be a subscriber, and then secondly, you need to go over to the Whiskey Cove's website, and then you need to sign up for the free Whiskey Cove giveaway. Enter your shipping details there, and then just pay attention for where we do the 5,000 subscriber event to see if your name gets pulled, and then reach out to the Whiskey Cove. A little bit of FAQs are down in the description below. As soon as you finish watching this video, go over there and sign up for that. So far we have 5 bottles, and then we will release one more as soon as we hit 5,000, making 6. So far we have the Willet 4-year rye, the Old Forester single barrel strength, early time bottled and bond, the old discontinued brown Foreman, Weller 107 OWA, and then lastly E.H.Taylor small batch. So if you would like to win one of these 5 and then one more when we release it, definitely be a subscriber, and then secondly, put in your ticket. So let's get these balls out of the way, and then let's get on with today's video, shall we? So I am not including Eagle Rare on this list because I did a previous video here not so long ago, and we included it on that video. And just for you folks at home who haven't seen that video, I said I would pay $40, well, you should pay about $40, but no more really. So let's get into today's video, and let's start with the quintessential bourbon that is, or the darling of this list, and that is just Buffalo Trace. So we'll do regular Buffalo Trace, and then we'll do Buffalo Trace as a store pick as well. So just regular Buffalo Trace. I think this is a fantastic bourbon. Excellent gateway bourbon as well. Anybody who's new to whiskey and new to bourbon and is looking for something to try to start with their palate, I think this is definitely right in there. This and maybe Evan Williams Bottled and Bond or the Elijah Craig small batch are really good offerings for people who are just getting into bourbon. MSRP on this should be about $25. I know there's some states, or quite a lot of states, that this isn't readily available. For the most part in Colorado, it is. I would pay up to about $37 for this. That's about $12 more than MSRP. I think it definitely punches above its weight. Beautiful vanilla notes right away throughout. Carries a nice wood presence there as well, and a little bit of spice. It's like everything you want in a bourbon. Yes, it's not going to explode in your mouth with different flavors. However, it offers some of the quintessential bourbon flavors, and it does it very, very well. And that's why I believe you should be willing to pay an extra $12 for this, so $37. For the single barrel store picks, which is the ones that you generally see with like the single barrel sticker on the side here. So I think you're getting better value for money with those single barrel picks because they offer some of the same characteristics, but it can also be a little bit more amped up. I feel like you get more value for money. So if I would be paying or willing to pay, or recommending that you pay $37 for the small batch, I would go up to $43. I know we're cutting change a little bit here, but I do think that's important. I think $43 at $5, $6 more than this one. I think it's definitely worth it, and you get a little bit of variety between the single barrels. And I know you didn't come to watch this video because you know that this whiskey is easy to find, and I'm only going to pre-state this once. None of this whiskey is generally easy to find. It's going to be quite difficult because it is all Buffalo Trace bourbon, so that kind of should go without saying, but I'll just say it once. So $37 for the small batch, and then I'd be willing, or I should recommend, up to $43 then for the single barrels. If you've never had one of the single barrels before, maybe even think about going up to 50. I do still think there's value to be had at $50, but I would try to stay under 45, and I think 43 is the sweet spot there. Buffalo Trace. Next up, we are going to do, let's do Blanton's. Very polarizing bourbon. And I do think that for the most part, the consistencies, because this is a single barrel, it is only ever sold as a single barrel. There is quite a lot of good consistency across the single barrels. I haven't really had a bad one that I can remember. I've had ones that have just been okay, but I've also had ones that have been very, very good. And I've never had a bad one. MSRP, again, depending on where you are, but I'll try to stick to Colorado. You're gonna be looking around $55 for this at MSRP. For that price, excellent value for money. And then when we take into price as well, you have to take into what are you getting exactly. You're getting a good bourbon, yes. You're getting a pretty nice looking bottle, yes. You're getting a stopper. You're getting a story with the stoppers. You're getting a story with Colonel Blanton there as well. You're almost getting a complete package with Blanton's. And yes, it's also almost become like the IPA of the beer, of the whiskey world, if you like. But I think there is a lot of value in this bottle. I think you should be willing to pay more than the MSRP. So if the MSRP was $55, I would go up to $75 for this bottle. It's an excellent gift as well. So if you have people or have friends, family who are a little bit into bourbon, know enough about, if you buy them a bottle of Blanton's for Christmas and you pay $75, I do think that's money well spent. I know there might be some people screaming at the screen saying that's still too much, but I do think people get caught up in the facade of the bottle and the story and kind of the fanfare attached to it. But ultimately, if you look beneath that, you actually get a pretty good bourbon, single barrel Buffalo Trace bourbon as well. So that was Blanton's, and do be willing to pay up to $75. You might still not be able to find it for less than that, but I wouldn't go up to some of the crazy numbers that are available out there. Try to stick to $75. That was Blanton's single barrel. Next up, let's do this actually. Let's do the budget one on the list here. This is Ancient Age 10. So this is Ancient Age 10 Star. So they used to be aged for 10 years. But of course, as time has gone on, there's not value in creating a 10-year budget whiskey anymore. So they eventually moved away from that and switch the 10-year age statement to 10-year star recipe. So this is a 1.75 litre bottle. I've never seen them in the full-size regular bottles, the 750 mils. I've only ever seen them in these tall plastic containers. Not available in Colorado. Can't find these in Colorado, and I haven't been able to find them that much in many other states as well. Where I find mine is Wyoming. If you look hard enough, you'll usually be able to find these. I paid $30 for a 1.75 litre. A little bit of the math here. So if you're paying that much, you're probably looking at about $13 at MSRP for a full-size bottle, which is good value for money. I still think this is a pretty decent whiskey. Not as good as Buffalo Trace, but it does share some of that flavor profile. A lot of that Buffalo Trace vanilla comes through like vanilla wafer, and it does have a nice little bit of wood to back it up. The only drawback will be is that it does taste a little bit thin, and it's the same ABV as the Buffalo Trace, but it's good for a daily sipper, which is what I like it for. So if we say $13 for a regular size bottle, I will be willing to pay up to $20 for it. But if any more than $20, then you're kind of leeching into the Buffalo Trace category, and Buffalo Trace is a superior whiskey than the Ancient Age 10 Star. So go up to $20, don't go up to any more. If you can find it for $13 for the full-size bottles, which I don't even think exist, then definitely do that too. Ancient Age 10. Next up, and let's go with Elma Tea Lee. So we've done reviews on Elma Tea Lee on this channel. We've done blinds with a Buffalo Trace Store Pick and Ancient Age 10. If you are someone who watches a lot of our content on this channel, firstly, thank you so much for doing that. We appreciate it. And then secondly, you will also notice that in the blind, the Ancient Age 10 Star finished last. Elma Tea Lee came second, and then Buffalo Trace Single Barrel came in first. So what I tend to say when we talk about Elma Tea Lee is, you're better off finding a Buffalo Trace Single Barrel Store Pick, because there's a lot better value for money to be had. MSRP on this is, if you believe it or not, about $40, which is, if you think of some of the crazy prices that get quoted on different markets, then that sounds really cheap, because other markets dictate about $200 to $250. So obviously we're not taking that into consideration, but for $40, it's not too bad considering that. However, I don't think that the distillate in this bottle is worth $40. I would rather obviously collections, fanfare, and how a bottle represents to other people. Not taking that into account, taking just the whiskey in the bottle, I would rather get a Buffalo Trace single barrel, or even just a Buffalo Trace a small batch, excuse me, instead of this. So $40 MSRP, I wouldn't pay more than $25 for it, if I'm completely honest. I know people are like, oh, you'll pay $25 all day long for that. And yes, I would pay $25 all day long. But if we're just thinking about the whiskey here in the glass, then it's not really worth more than $25 in my opinion. Of course, you'll probably still pick it up for $40 because you maybe can trade it with other people for stuff that you really like. But for me, this whiskey is just a little bit flat, a little bit thin, and just a little bit disappointing. That's why I'm saying $25 for Elma Tea Leaf. Next up, when we go with Stag, we go with two different Stags because we're going to do Stag Junior, and then we're also going to do Stag Junior, a single barrel pick. And let's do the regular Stag here. So MSRP on this in Colorado, you're probably looking at about $60. I picked one up very recently and I paid $60 for that bottle. Of course, they can go for a lot more. Rarely will you find them for $60, and it's only because of my persistence, my loyalty, and just my general annoyance to shop owners that I have the availability to sometimes get stuff for MSRP, and I was with a Stag for $60. I do really like Stag, and we've talked about it a lot on the channel. You know, Stag is definitely a go-to. Any kind of top tier list, any best bourbons, it can't always make the list. The Stag Juniors do. I think it's worth paying up for $100 for it, if I'm completely honest. And hopefully, you know, Buffalo Trace isn't watching this video saying, okay, we'll mark that up, because that's not the point of this video. That's the point of this video, is to kind of give you feedback on what I believe that the whiskey and the kind of the branding is worth. And I would definitely pay $100 for the Stag. It's not called Stag Junior. I know a lot of people still call it Stag Junior. It's more easy to able to identify it as calling it Stag Junior. They come out with 3 different editions every year. I bought one, I think it was like the 22B, which I haven't got into, but I haven't tried some of the newer stuff. But definitely the older range from like 1 up to I think it was 18, when it was the original Stag Junior, where it has the Junior on the bottle, were all fantastic. And definitely, I would be definitely willing to pay $100 for that. So that was the regular Stag. And then let's talk about the Stag Junior single barrel picks, because the Stag Junior on its own is phenomenal. But when it comes to the single barrel picks, I do feel like it steps up another gear, which is almost unheard of, but it finds room to go again, if you like. This is a Dave Co. Select pick from Thornton, Colorado, coming at 66.7% ABV or 133.4 proof. If you watch some of the bottles, my most important or special bottles to me, this was on there, because this is a store pick. This is a phenomenal tasting whiskeys. I've been able to try this Stag, and it was so good, and it was more of like a collectible thing and something I wanted to really keep for a rainy day. That's why I haven't opened it yet. But we're not talking about this specific single barrel. We're talking about my own experience with single barrels in general. I would be willing to go up to 125 because, as I said, I feel like there's an extra gear there, and I definitely feel like it's worth it. Yes, most places you're not even going to find them for $100. You're not even going to find them for $150. You're going to be paying up the nose more than that. But if you have good relationships and you are able to buy them for MSRP, pay up to $100 for the regular Stag and $125 for some of the single barrel picks. And it might even be worth going up a little bit more because some of the single barrel picks are hazmat, so 70% ABV or 140 proof plus. And then sometimes maybe that's worth a little bit more. But for consistency's sake, I would say 125 for the single barrels. That was Stag Junior. Next up, we're going to move into the E.H.Taylors. First up, we're going to go with E.H.Taylor Small Batch. 50% ABV or 100 proof, bottled in bond, beautiful tube, beautiful presentation there as well. MSRP on this is still only about $45 in Colorado. I will say, like a Blanton's, the MSRP has kicked up a lot in Colorado, but E.H.Taylor has actually stayed somewhat relatively low for the most part, which has been quite a shock because it's a fantastic tasting bourbon. And like I said, you know, it has the tube and has everything to go with that good tasting bourbon as well. So MSRP about $45. How much would I pay for it? Again, much like the Blantons, I would be willing to go up to $75 if that was what kind of like the new baseline was at. I think it's definitely worth that. It's interesting that like this used to be like a $20-25 bottle 5-6 years ago, and it must have been insane value for money back then, and it was sitting on shelves everywhere. Crazy. But I would definitely be thinking pay up to $75 and you will not be disappointed. And heck, it looks good on the shelf. You can bring it out when you have some company over, pull it out of the tube. It's better distillate for me than something like a Booker's, and it's just a cool bottle with good tasting whiskey. That was E.H.Taylor small batch. Next up, we're gonna go with E.H.Taylor straight rye. So one of not many ryes that are in the E.H.Taylor series, if any. This may be the only one. There's probably like a special pick there somewhere. And I know that they were supposed to be coming out with a barrel proof version of this. I never saw that. I never really heard it hitting anywhere in Colorado, so that might have been so select that it just never really hit any stores. However, we're talking about just a regular straight rye here. I paid about $80 for this. And I think that's right around the MSRP here in Colorado. This was last year, but I don't believe that that's gone up too much. And why I have not much information about that is because this has gone super rare. Like the E.H.Taylor straight dry, and it's maybe because that they brought out the barrel proof version and they kind of borrowed some of that distillate, that this has almost become a bit of a unicorn here in Colorado. I haven't seen it for ages. I haven't seen it hit any lists. I haven't seen it hit any tables anywhere. So on that basis, and on the quality of the distillate and uniqueness of the whiskey that's in the bottle, again, I will be thinking about paying up to $100. I don't think the whiskey is anything super insane and fantastic and awesome. I think it's good whiskey, and I also think that the rarity of the whiskey as well kind of bumps it up a little bit. So MSRP was $75. I would pay $100 for it, but anything after that, then you're probably going into the realm of something like an Old Forester barrel strength single barrel rye, Jack Daniel's single barrel rye, that sort of thing, which are probably, even though I haven't tried the Jack Daniel's, my assumption is with that you're probably going to get better value for money with that, but the Old Forester barrel strength single barrel rye knocks this out of the park. So that was the straight rye. Don't pay more than $100 for it. And then lastly, we have one more bottle, and that is the E.H.Taylor single barrel. So we are doing this twice because you can get them in single barrel store picks as well. So just the regular single barrel on its own. Again, actually MSRP is fairly cheap here. You're actually looking $59.99, $60 in Colorado. Again, I know it's cheap if you can find it, but again, the keyword if you can find it at the MSRP. Excellent value for money. I prefer John J. Bowman if I can find it for that price, but that shouldn't detract on how much I'd be willing to pay for this. So obviously we're gonna kick up a little bit more than small batch, which was $75, and I think it would be worth paying up to $100. And I'm sure there's people out there that regularly would pay $100 for this. I do think it's worth it. I think the consistency again with the single barrels is at a very high level. I definitely think it's worth it there as well. So what about the E.H.Taylor single barrel store picks that seem to drop quite a lot? MSRP in Colorado is about $10 more, probably like $69.99 or $70 for argument's sake. And again, I think $100, again, I don't think the single barrel store picks are any better in value or in whiskey or in consistency as just the regular offerings. You get some of those like with the other whiskey we've talked about, but just I've never tried one that I can say is honestly better than the original version. So again, around that sort of price, $100 for both of them, and I think that's really fair. And that was E.H.Taylor single barrel. So again, that was maybe a part one or part two. We might do another second part with the Wellers, the Buffalo Trace Kosher, and then the Benchmark series, because I think we have enough whiskey there to have a decent sized video for that. So maybe be on the lookout of a part two in the future. And if you've enjoyed today's video and you want to support the channel, then definitely subscribe and continue watching the content. We really appreciate it, and don't forget to hit that like button. So as we drink through the world's whiskies, one glass at a time, cheers.